you could really say a lot of bad things about CJ. In GTA San Andreas, we'll find many situations in which CJ didn't exactly think something through, made some stupid or irrational decisions, or just made an idiot of himself. Cause like, how can you bury in concrete some random construction worker who's hidden in a portable toilet and say that you wanted to teach him a lesson because someone shouted something to Kendall that she looks like a hooker? Another time, CJ, along with Rosenberg, went to Sindako's family abattoir to negotiate, and there would be nothing wrong with that if not for the fact that CJ has scared their underboss half to death just a few days ago by driving mad around the city with him tied to the front of the car. And just for the record, Johnny got so scared that day that in the following days he was crapping in diapers and riding a wheelchair, and it was obvious that the chances that Johnny would recognize CJ in that abattoir were huge, and then nothing good would come of that. So what was CJ thinking? God knows. Yeah, well, these decisions weren't exactly reasonable. However, despite that, you won't find many who don't like CJ. Even myself, despite that I laughed at CJ's decisions, complained about him many times. Or often, he just irritated me. I could never say that I dislike him, so yeah, I do like CJ, but I don't really know why. I mean, I used to not know, but now I do. Hence, the idea for today's episode, in which I want to share some personal thoughts on why we love Carlito so much, and why his face forces a smile on our faces. Let me know after the video whether you agree with them, of course. But I made a few polls on my channels about this, and they all show the same thing. What's crucial for me is the affection that the beginning of the game makes us feel for this character, cause that's just the way it is, at least in the majority of cases, that we sympathize with people who we see suffer. Actually, many stories are written this way, that at the beginning, a protagonist has a ton of problems. This obviously allows them to conduct a story that, you know, we gotta get out of all this trouble, overcome adversities, and eventually climb our way to the top. However, throwing a boatload of problems at the protagonist from the very beginning is also done so a player can build a bond with them, so their problems become our problems, and so we do anything we can with the protagonist just to get out of the hole. But the question is, why is CJ the one that the players built the best connection with? Cause like, there's a lot of characters in the GTA series that are also deep in that are in serious trouble. Yeah, Vic Vance had a difficult family situation. Vercetti only got out of jail and immediately got himself into some mess. Let alone Nico, who has the worst case, cause he has a nutcase for a cousin that torments him and he has to go bowling with him all the time. And of course, every main character is in some way screwed. But the scale of CJ's tragedy is definitely the biggest. CJ loses his own mother, and that's only a few years after the loss of his little brother. Even Huang's loss of his father from GTA Chinatown Wars is nowhere near as bad. There, the situation is much different because already in the intro, we can tell that Huang didn't really have a great relationship with his father. And that's why it wasn't so hard for him to accept such a state of affairs. I mean, that his father's gone. Plus, in CJ's case, it was not that his mom was just an old and sick woman and everybody knew that she would die soon. You know, some say that then a family can somewhat prepare for that relative's death and all. I mean, of course, even let's say an unexpected death is very hard to take, but here, Beverly Johnson was murdered in her own house. Moreover, CJ had to cope with the negative comments about him. See, his friends and family were angry with him that he left the city for 5 years in the moment when they needed him the most. So not only was CJ grieving his mother's death, but additionally he had to compensate for running off to Liberty City in the attempt to forget about the tragic events of 1987. So to summarize a bit, the developers wrote the beginning of the story in a way that we as players treat CJ as a young man that's been through a lot and who we simply want to help get on his feet. Furthermore, after completing a couple of missions on Grove Street, we already feel at home. We can feel that this is where CJ comes from. I mean, okay, perhaps Sweet sometimes complains and treats CJ pretty badly. Ryder also constantly gives CJ a hard time for the fact that he left the city when he shouldn't have, but it usually has a rather humorous tone. Other than that, the atmosphere of the hood and the missions for our homies are the elements that definitely do a great job in this aspect. We've got a similar case with Luis Lopez in The Ballad of Gay Tony. but on a much smaller scale. However, Luis can visit his mom and hang out with his sandbox homies, talk about the past or about life in general. It makes it so the game isn't just one big job, and it doesn't revolve around solving one problem after another. We can say the same about San Andreas. Alright, cool. We're going with Smoke for example, to get heated up at Emmett and try to at least somewhat patch up the relationship between Grove Street families and Seville Boulevard. But in the meantime, we find out from Smoke how the relations between these sets got broken during CJ's absence, why they're no longer working together, and now are more hostile than friendly, and also why this is one of the reasons for GSF's difficult situation. Another time, we think as though we're about to start some important mission given to us by Big Smoke, and then it turns out that the mission is to go to the police station to pick up an old friend, OG Loke. Yet another time, our task is to babysit our sister Kendall by checking out whether the guy she's seeing isn't some next asshole and if that Mexican with the mustache is trustworthy. As players, time by time, we witness situations that either give us that family feeling or make us feel as if we're part of a very interesting community in which every day brings something new. And yeah, there are issues, but there are also our homies who we're helping in the name of unity and brotherhood. Together, we take actions that aim to put our hood back on the map, reunite the sets, and solve the mystery of the death of Beverly Johnson. What I'm saying is that such a family atmosphere around the player adds to immersion, thereby helping us identify with the protagonist and to feel a part of all this. Then there's more of normal life in the story. One time, we're joking around with our homies. Another time, we're eating out at Cluck and Bell with them. You could really get immersed in the game. And it's not even all thanks to CJ, but mainly to the environment around him, that we sympathize with the protagonist even more. This also leads to some negative consequences, which in this aspect are a good thing. Let me explain. I'm talking about the motive of betrayal in GTA San Andreas. In GTA 4, for instance, Dimitri's betrayal isn't exactly heartbreaking. Dimitri's some next dickhead that, as the story continues, turns out to be an even bigger dickhead. In GTA Vice City Stories, we've got Martinez, for example, who also betrays Vic, but actually all it does is it changes its role in the story a bit. Then he's not our employer, but a target, which eventually Vic eliminates. And was Martinez any important for Vic at all? Of course not. He was just some moron that likes to jerk off to some zoophilic porn by El Burro. This pattern repeats itself many times. Is it GTA 4 or GTA 5, or the cases described a while ago, where the antagonists are often some random dudes? But in GTA San Andreas, we deal with a completely different scenario. The developers first created Ryder and Big Smoke as our good friends, and then revealed to us the harsh truth that it's them who stick a knife in our back. Such a betrayal hurts, and very badly too. But at the same time, it's a genius story design that brings a lot of emotions. This was simply a brilliant move from Rockstar to make up something like this, and huge credit to them for that. Also, huge credit for CJ himself, who despite many blunders that we talked about at the beginning, is still very likable.
Loke, is he available for communication?
CJ is very charismatic. He generates a ton of funny situations with just his way of being. He has some hilarious reactions to certain things, especially during meetings with characters like Catalina or The Truth. And yes, a lot of it is thanks to Rockstar for putting him in such an environment, so a joke-friendly one. However, CJ is also a part of this environment, so it has to be pointed out. Moreover, CJ is often funny on his own, even when he's not really trying to be. Hence, up to this day, people upload a lot of memes with CJ in the main role. There's a lot of funny characters in the GTA series: Umberto, Brucey, Yusuf, Rennie, or Roman. However, CJ is definitely one of the funniest protagonists in the series. We also have to mention that CJ, as opposed to many other protagonists, often makes decisions himself. What I mean is that many threads in different parts of GTA are just about going somewhere, collecting a job, executing that job, and then getting paid. A couple of times like that, and that's about it. Essentially, every thread in GTA 3 is the definition of that. But it's not that we only see it in GTA 3, but also in other parts, like in GTA Vice City, where we deal with a similar case while working for Umberto, Lovefist, or paradoxically, even while putting work for some of our businesses that Tommy is supposed to run himself, for Christ's sake. And yeah, we do have threads like the film studio or the Versetti's mansion missions, but it's actually Tommy who calls the shots. and it's cool, but we'll just find a lot more of it in GTA San Andreas. Take Woozy's thread for instance, that at first seems like a perfect candidate for a thread of the series. Collect a job, do a job, get paid. However, Rockstar decided not only to make CJ and Woozy good friends, but give CJ actual influence on this thread. After all, CJ gives his opinion on Woozy's actions and sometimes even proposes some solutions himself, like in the mission Lure for example. As you can see, CJ, even in such a thread, doesn't play the role of just a senseless killer. At times, CJ is scared to do some missions, and sometimes has more than enough of completing very risky jobs for somebody. Just like in the case of Mike Torino. Despite a couple of strange moments, the majority of the time, CJ shows us that he's got his own personality, that he actually takes part in his life, and isn't just a passive spectator. And as if that weren't enough, in GTA San Andreas, we can tamper with the protagonist as in no other GTA game. No other part can compete with San Andreas when it comes to customization of the main character. We can dress CJ in 6 different chain shops, change his haircut, get him a tattoo, and even influence his physique. We can make CJ fat, skinny, muscly, not muscly, whatever we like. We can even choose his fighting style. All this allows us to create a protagonist according to our wish. Rockstar, basically, instead of trying to figure out how to create a main character that the majority will like, they just gave us the possibility to create it on our own. Metaphorically speaking, the developers, instead of giving us a finished drawing, gave us some colored pencils and a sheet of paper. So everybody can make CJ look the way they like. On top of that, we got some other aspects like free roam lines, mysterious threads, myths, fun facts, and the whole in-game world in general. So we could say the things around CJ that just better our experiences while playing the game. And since the main character is a very crucial part of any game, if we love the game, we also love the protagonist. Let me know if you can think of any other reason that wasn't mentioned in this video, and be sure to check out my video about the dumbest decisions of CJ, to continue with the subject of this episode. Meanwhile, I'm saying goodbye, take care, and see you soon.